For more than a century, wars have been decided by who controls the sky. When fighter jets replaced propeller planes, the balance of power shifted. When stealth aircraft first appeared, radar systems that once seemed unbeatable suddenly became vulnerable. And when aircraft carriers transformed the oceans into floating airbases, entire military strategies had to be rewritten. Now, something just happened that could belong in that same category. China has flown what many are calling the world's first true drone mothership. Not just another unmanned aircraft, not just a bigger drone, but something entirely different. A platform designed to carry and release dozens, even up to 100, smaller drones while still in the air. Think about that for a moment. What happens when a single aircraft can unleash an entire air force mid-flight? This isn't just a new tool, it's the birth of a new class of air power. Imagine looking up and seeing one large aircraft cruising at high altitude. It doesn't dive, it doesn't fire a missile. Instead, doors open, and from its belly, wave after wave of autonomous drones scatter across the sky. Some jam radar, some scout targets, some strike, and they all coordinate with each other. That image isn't science fiction anymore. If stealth aircraft changed how we hide in the sky, and aircraft carriers changed how we project power across oceans, then a flying drone carrier could change how wars are fought in the air entirely. And the most important part? This isn't a concept drawing. It has already flown. But to understand why this moment matters, we need to rewind, back to when the world first saw this aircraft as just another ambitious display model, because at first, almost no one believed it would actually leave the ground. In late 2024, at the Zhuhai Air Show, China revealed something that looked almost too ambitious to be real. Air shows are full of bold ideas. Countries display futuristic jets, hypersonic concepts, stealth bombers that may never leave the drawing board. It's part marketing, part signaling, part long-term vision. And when this massive unmanned aircraft, described as a drone carrier, was unveiled, many analysts treated it the same way. Interesting concept, impressive model. But flying? That's another story. Because designing something like this isn't easy. It's one thing to build a large drone. It's another to build one that can travel more than 8,000 kilometers, roughly the distance from Beijing to Sydney, without refueling. That kind of range means intercontinental reach. It's no longer regional, it's strategic. Then there's altitude, 15,000 meters, or about 50,000 feet. That's higher than most commercial airliners fly. At that height, the air is thinner. Engines have to be efficient. Structures must withstand pressure changes. Sensors must function in extreme cold. And then comes payload, up to 5 tons. To put that in perspective, 5 tons is about the weight of a large African elephant. That's what this aircraft can carry into the sky, and potentially deploy mid-air. Range gives it reach. Altitude gives it survivability. Payload gives it flexibility. Together, those 3 factors transform it from a large drone into a strategic platform. When the aircraft first appeared in Zhuhai, it was a statement of intent. But statements don't change military balance. Operational capability does. Now it has flown. That single fact changes the conversation. It proves aerodynamic stability, it proves propulsion works, it proves the structure can handle the weight. In military development, the first successful flight is the line between imagination and reality. The world saw a concept, now it has seen proof, and once proof exists, the next question becomes unavoidable. What exactly makes this aircraft so different from every other drone already in the sky? Because the real revolution isn't how far it can fly, it's what it carries and what it can release. To understand why this aircraft is different, imagine a naval aircraft carrier. A carrier sails across the ocean carrying dozens of fighter jets. It doesn't fight alone. It launches aircraft that spread out, strike targets, scout ahead, and defend the fleet. The carrier itself is a floating airbase, a force multiplier. Now take that idea and lift it 50,000 feet into the sky. That's the core innovation here. This drone mothership isn't just a surveillance platform or a bomber. It's designed to carry and deploy up to 100 smaller drones while airborne. Not 1 or 2, an entire swarm. Picture this. One large aircraft cruising at high altitude. A hatch opens. Dozens of compact drones drop out and immediately activate. Within seconds, they spread out in multiple directions. Some fly ahead to map enemy radar positions. Some jam communications. Some dive toward high-value targets. Others relay data back to the mothership. Instead of sending 10 separate aircraft into hostile airspace, you send 1. And it deploys its own air force mid-flight. That's why comparisons to an aircraft carrier aren't exaggeration. It plays the same role, but in the sky. And launching drones from high altitude gives them a major advantage. When drones are released at 15,000 meters, they start with potential energy, like a glider dropped from a mountain peak. They can travel farther, faster, and with less fuel consumption than if they launched from the ground. That extends their strike radius and makes interception harder. It also complicates defense systems. Traditional air defenses are built to track and intercept individual aircraft or incoming missiles, but swarms change the math. Instead of tracking one large radar signature, defenders suddenly face dozens of smaller, fast-moving objects coming from multiple directions. It's like trying to stop one spear versus stopping a cloud of arrows. And this is where the wow factor becomes clear. The revolution isn't just in size or range, it's in scale. Scale of deployment, scale of coordination, scale of saturation. This aircraft doesn't simply fight, it multiplies force. But here's the critical part, and the part many people overlook. Releasing 100 drones is impressive. Controlling them without chaos is something else entirely. And that's where the real power of this system may lie. Launching 100 drones sounds powerful, but here's the real question. How do you control them? Imagine trying to manually fly 100 remote-controlled aircraft at the same time. It would be impossible. Even a team of skilled operators couldn't react fast enough to avoid collisions, assign targets, adjust routes, and respond to enemy interference all at once. So this system cannot rely on human joystick control. It relies on artificial intelligence. Each drone in the swarm must constantly calculate its position, speed, and direction. It must avoid crashing into other drones. It must adapt if one drone is shot down. It must reroute if signals are jammed. And it must decide how to prioritize targets, all in real time. That's not traditional command and control. That's autonomous coordination. Think of it like a flock of birds. There's no single bird issuing commands. Each one follows simple rules. Maintain distance, match direction, avoid obstacles. And together they move as one fluid shape. Swarm AI works in a similar way, but with military objectives layered on top. Now scale that up to a battlefield. Electronic interference, hostile radar, surface-to-air missiles, communication disruption. The swarm must continue functioning even if contact with the mothership is partially lost. That requires onboard decision-making systems, not just remote instructions. This is why swarm warfare is fundamentally an AI problem. The aircraft itself is impressive engineering, engines, airframe, payload systems. But the real weapon may not be the metal in the sky. It's the intelligence running inside the drones. China has invested heavily in artificial intelligence research, autonomous systems, and civil-military technology integration over the past decade. Swarm logic, machine learning, and distributed coordination are not just academic experiments. They're being adapted into defense applications. In simple terms, hardware gives you reach. AI gives you control. And control is what turns a swarm from a chaotic cloud into a coordinated strike force. But this isn't happening in isolation. Drone warfare isn't a future prediction. It's already reshaping battlefields around the world. And to understand how big this shift could be, we need to look at what's already happening in modern conflicts. Because the drone mothership doesn't create the drone era, it accelerates it. To understand why this aircraft matters, look at what's already happening on today's battlefields. In conflicts across Sudan, Yemen, South Lebanon, and especially Ukraine, small drones have changed how wars are fought. In Ukraine, relatively inexpensive quadcopters, some modified commercial models, have been used to scout enemy positions, guide artillery, and even carry small explosives. A drone that costs a few $1,000s can destroy equipment worth millions. That changes the math of warfare. In Yemen, long-range drones have struck oil facilities and military targets. In Sudan and Lebanon, armed groups have used drones to monitor and attack with precision that once required advanced air forces. The pattern is clear, cheap, mass-produced, hard to stop. Traditional air defense systems were built to intercept fighter jets and ballistic missiles, threats that are large, fast, and expensive. But drone swarms create a different challenge. Imagine a defense system that fires a missile costing hundreds of thousands of dollars to shoot down a drone worth a few thousand. Now multiply that by 20, 30, or 50 drones arriving at once. That's called saturation. It's not about being individually unstoppable. It's about overwhelming the system through numbers. Instead of a duel between two advanced aircraft, modern drone warfare looks more like waves. Waves of small machines probing, scouting, striking, adapting. And here's the key shift. For decades, air power was defined by manned aircraft, fighter pilots, bombers, expensive training, years of preparation. Now, autonomous systems are taking on roles that once required human crews in the cockpit. The sky is becoming automated. This is where the drone mothership becomes significant. It doesn't just participate in this trend, it scales it. Instead of launching drones from trucks or short-range bases, it launches them from high altitude, deep inside contested airspace. Instead of sending dozens of separate launch platforms, it sends one carrier aircraft. In other words, it industrializes drone warfare from the sky. If small drones have already reshaped battlefields on a tactical level, a high-altitude drone carrier could push that shift to the strategic level. But here's something important to remember. The idea of a flying aircraft carrier isn't new. In fact, major powers explored it decades ago and failed. So why is it possible now? That's where history gives us perspective. The idea of a flying aircraft carrier sounds futuristic, but it's not new. Back in the early Cold War, the United States experimented with the concept of launching smaller fighter aircraft from large bombers. The logic was simple: extend range, increase flexibility, and protect strategic bombers deep in enemy territory. Projects like Parasite fighter programs tried to attach small jets to large aircraft, then release them mid-air. On paper, it sounded brilliant. In practice, it was a nightmare. Docking aircraft in mid-air was extremely difficult. Turbulence made connections unstable, weight limits strained engines, communication systems weren't advanced enough for complex coordination, and most importantly, there was no artificial intelligence to manage multiple aircraft at once. Technology just wasn't ready. Materials were heavier, electronics were bulkier, guidance systems lacked precision, real-time data links were unreliable. Every added aircraft increased complexity exponentially. It was like trying to run modern cloud computing on a 1960s calculator. Eventually, the concept was abandoned. Traditional aircraft carriers at sea remained dominant, and long-range missiles became the preferred solution for deep strikes. For decades, the flying carrier idea faded into the background, more science fiction than strategy. So what changed? Three major breakthroughs converged. First, materials science. Modern composite materials are lighter and stronger, allowing large unmanned aircraft to carry heavy payloads without excessive weight penalties. Second, propulsion systems. High-efficiency engines now allow long-endurance flights at high altitude without massive fuel consumption. Third, and most important, miniaturized electronics and AI. Drones today can carry powerful processors, sensors, and communication systems that once required entire rooms of hardware. What was once mechanically overwhelming is now digitally manageable. Yesterday, the problem was physics and coordination. Today, software solves what hardware once could not. This is the contrast that matters. Yesterday's dream, today's operational test flight. The concept didn't change, the technology did. And when technology catches up with old ideas, the results can reshape military doctrine overnight. Which brings us to the biggest question of all. If this system becomes fully operational, how does it change the meaning of air superiority itself? To understand the impact of this system, we need to talk about one core idea in military strategy: air superiority. Air superiority simply means controlling the sky so your enemy can't operate freely. If your aircraft can fly without being shot down, and theirs can't, you gain a massive advantage. You can support ground troops, strike supply lines, gather intelligence, and disrupt enemy coordination. For decades, achieving air superiority meant sending waves of fighter jets to destroy radar systems, air defenses, and enemy aircraft. It required skilled pilots, advanced stealth technology, electronic warfare aircraft, and enormous budgets. It was complex, risky, expensive. Now imagine achieving similar effects, but with far fewer human pilots in danger. A drone mothership changes the model in four major ways. First, fewer pilots at risk. Instead of sending human crews into heavily defended airspace, one unmanned platform releases autonomous drones. If drones are lost, there's no pilot captured, no rescue mission required. The political and human cost decreases. Second, greater saturation capability. Traditional fighter missions are limited by how many aircraft can be deployed at once. A swarm system can flood an area with dozens of drones simultaneously. Air defense systems that were designed to intercept individual aircraft may struggle to track and engage a cloud of small moving targets. Third, persistent presence. With long endurance and high-altitude capability, a drone carrier can loiter for extended periods. It can wait, observe, and deploy swarms at the optimal moment. That creates constant pressure on an opponent. Fourth, long-range strike flexibility. An 8,000-kilometer range means operations far beyond local borders. Combined with high-altitude deployment, smaller drones launched mid-air can reach deeper targets than ground-launch systems alone. Put simply, this platform doesn't just fight for air superiority, it amplifies it. And here's where tension rises. Modern air defense systems are incredibly advanced, but most are optimized to detect and intercept a limited number of high-value targets: jets, bombers, cruise missiles. When dozens of smaller drones approach from multiple directions, interception becomes a math problem. If you have 10 interceptors and 50 incoming drones, something gets through. For smaller nations with limited air defense networks, that imbalance could be even more dramatic. A system like this might allow a major power to project force in ways that were previously difficult without deploying massive fleets. And when military technology shifts like this, doctrine must evolve. Air forces around the world may need to rethink training, procurement, and defensive systems. Investments could shift toward anti-swarm technologies, directed energy weapons, electronic warfare upgrades, and AI-based defense systems. Because once one nation proves a concept works, others respond. If this platform reaches full operational capability, it won't just be another aircraft in the inventory. It could represent a structural shift in how air power is generated, projected, and defended against. And that leads to the final, bigger picture. Are we witnessing the beginning of a fully autonomous era in aerial warfare? For more than 100 years, air combat has centered around one figure: the pilot. From the dogfights of World War I to stealth jets of the 21st century, the human in the cockpit has been the symbol of air power. Skill, training, instinct. These defined dominance in the sky. But what happens when the pilot is no longer the center of the system? The drone Mothership represents something bigger than one aircraft. It represents a shift toward autonomous air combat ecosystems, networks of machines that scout, decide, adapt, and strike with minimal human input. In this model, the aircraft isn't just a vehicle, it's a launch platform, a command node, a distributor of force. The line between aircraft and weapon system begins to blur. Instead of sending a fighter to drop a bomb, you send a system that deploys dozens of autonomous agents. Instead of relying on human reaction time, you rely on machine speed coordination. Decisions that once took seconds, or minutes, could happen in fractions of a second. That changes tempo, and tempo changes warfare. Now the big questions begin. Will other nations respond with their own drone carriers? Will air defense systems evolve fast enough to counter swarm saturation? Are we entering an era where battles in the sky are fought primarily by machines coordinating with machines? And what does that mean for traditional air forces built around pilots, squadrons, and manned aircraft? History shows that every major leap in military technology forces adaptation. When aircraft carriers emerged, battleships lost dominance. When stealth aircraft appeared, radar strategies had to change. When drones entered the battlefield, cost equations shifted. Now we may be seeing the next phase. The first successful flight of a drone mothership may one day be remembered as the moment autonomous aerial warfare moved from theory to practice. Not science fiction, not a display model, but a functioning system. Whether this development represents innovation, escalation, or inevitability is something the world will debate in the years ahead. But one thing is clear: the sky is changing, and we are watching it happen in real time. If you found this breakdown valuable, share your thoughts below. Do you think drone motherships are the future of air power, or just one step in a much larger transformation? Let's discuss.